The January 6th House Select Committee has unveiled some text messages from Fox News personalities during the January 6th riots. These were text messages that were sent to Trump's chief of staff, Mark Meadows, and the text messages were handed over to the committee as part of the 6,000 documents that Meadows had provided during this investigation. Now, he has refused to testify and respond to subpoenas for him to testify. And as a result, the House is going to decide pretty soon whether or not they're going to hold him in contempt of Congress. But for the purpose of this story, let's focus on what we've learned through the text messages that were provided by Mark Meadows to the committee. So Fox News hosts, on one hand, publicly claimed that the riots were no big deal, okay? It's not a big deal, they're not concerned about it. In fact, anyone on the left, any Democrat who's concerned about our democracy devolving as a result of these insurrectionists should rest easy, not a problem, right? Well, Sean Hannity, in his text message to Mark Meadows, wrote, "Can he," meaning Trump, "make a statement? Ask people to leave the Capitol." But there's more. Brian Kilmeade was also panicked about what was transpiring on that day. And in his text message to Mark Meadows, he said, "Please get him," meaning Donald Trump, "on TV, destroying everything you have accomplished."
So apparently you thought January 6th was awful, terrible, would destroy everything that Donald Trump accomplished. Does it look like they're saying that on Fox News now? More.
Now, even Laura Ingraham was urging Mark Meadows to do something about this, even though on television, she pretended like it was no biggie. She wrote, "Hey Mark, the president needs to tell people in the Capitol to go home. This is hurting all of us. He is destroying his legacy."
Laura Ingraham saying Trump is destroying his legacy on January 6th. If you ask her today, oh no, poor guys that were there, and when it was an inside job, and it was Antifa, and it was patriots, and they were political prisoners, and January 6th was a lovely picnic. But back then, on the day of, she thought it was destroying Trump's legacy. Now, you see how much they lie to you over and over again?
Over and over again. Now, why don't we juxtapose those text messages to what these personalities said on their own shows later that night?
Brian Kilmeade, Sean Hannity, Laura Ingraham of January 6th. Meet Brian Kilmeade, Sean Hannity, and Laura Ingraham since.
We also knew that there's always bad actors that will infiltrate large crowds. I don't care if they're radical left, radical right, I don't know who they are.
I have never seen Trump rally attendees wearing helmets, black helmets, brown helmets, black backpacks.
They knew they could just easily find out and determine hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people are going to show up, and because they did. They were descending onto the town, and there they go. They're there to peacefully protest. Then we had the reports that groups like Antifa, other radical groups, I don't know the names of all of them, that they were there to cause trouble.
The FBI will infiltrate groups, whether it's the mob or Al-Qaeda, and they'll try to be one of them and unwind a plot before it takes place. Right. Do you think maybe, perhaps, and maybe you don't want to give away your series, you find indications that the FBI was actually pushing for this invasion?
There was certainly a lot of violence that day, but it was not a terrorist attack. It wasn't 9/11. It wasn't the worst thing that ever happened to America. It wasn't an insurrection.
No, it's incredible. So blame it on Antifa, blame it on alleged infiltrators. But obviously behind the scenes, through what we're learning through their text messages sent to White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, they knew full well these are Trump supporters. And if Trump doesn't stop them, they will destroy his legacy.
If they were infiltrators, why would it destroy Trump's legacy? If it wasn't Trump supporters, why would it destroy Trump's legacy? If it was peaceful protesters, why would peaceful protesters destroy Trump's legacy? Oh, you knew on that day that it was Trump supporters, and you knew that they were doing something horrible. And what were they doing? It wasn't just the violence, guys. Remember, the main point of this was do not certify the election. It was a legal election that has been audited to no end. The Trump team has lost over 60 cases, won none. It was a perfectly legal election, and they knew it. and through violence, they tried to overturn it. In their crazed minds, they thought if Mike Pence, in his ceremonial role, just didn't certify the election, they could go back to the states, terrorize them into switching their electoral college votes and just steal the election. So it was in a sense, it really was a violent coup attempt. It wasn't a coup attempt like they were gonna grab the Capitol and then they were gonna man the post. No, but it was a coup attempt in take the ceremonial thing and pretend it's real and overturn the election. We don't like the results, so let's do violence and let's threaten to hang Mike Pence, that's what they chanted, etc. You guys know that. And it turns out the Fox News hosts also knew that, and they've been lying to you ever since.
Of course, of course. And the real question is, what did Mark Meadows know? What kind of communication did he have with Donald Trump? Remember, there were reports indicating that Mark Meadows was urging Trump to do something and Trump refused to. So all of this is being investigated right now. I have very little hope, to be honest, that people who are implicated in this are really gonna be held accountable. We'll see. But I do wanna give you a statement from Mark Meadows, who went on Newsmax and was asked about the text messages that he provided. By the way, it seems like Mark Meadows is shocked that these text messages ended up being pretty damning and that they're being used as part of this investigation. But without further ado, here he is on Newsmax.
Last night you were on with Sean Hannity, and I was surprised. Sean didn't mention the text message that both he and Laura Ingraham and others sent you on January 6th. I don't even know why this is an issue. Is it unusual for media people to text someone like the chief of staff? I mean, we just went through a case last week where Don Lemon was literally texting Jesse Smollett that the Chicago police didn't buy his story. Turned out that he was found guilty. Where's the problem here?
Well, there is no problem here. I can tell you a number of people were concerned about the violence. It's not just those texts. Here's the problem.
And you were concerned about the violence as well. We have those text messages.
Without a doubt, all of us were, including the president, the entire nation. So there's no problem here as much as there is a selective disclosure of certain texts trying to feed a narrative that the January 6th committee wants to put forth.
Look, I mean, Mr. 1950s comb over hairdo is like, I don't know. I mean, these Fox News personalities were panicking about what Trump supporters were doing in the Capitol on January 6th and urging Mark Meadows to put a stop to it. And then publicly they were minimizing and downplaying the violence on that day. But what's wrong? What's wrong here? What's the issue here? The issue is that powerful conservatives in this country, whether it be elected officials or members of the media, are intentionally lying to the American people, completely whitewashing what happened that day, and there are consequences to that. It emboldens the kind of behavior that we saw that day, and it's gonna continue. I mean, I have no idea what presidential elections are gonna be like now because of the precedent that's been set by Donald Trump, conservatives in Congress, and also conservative media. This is now gonna be commonplace, where every election is gonna lead to, calls of fraud that are obviously unfounded. In fact, any case involving voter fraud in 2020 usually points to conservative voters who tried to vote multiple times or tried to vote in various states. But doesn't matter. None of that truth matters. Like, what's the problem? What's the problem that we have an entire media infrastructure in place that intentionally spreads disinformation and misinforms people to the point where they think that the election was stolen from Donald Trump? What's the problem?
Yeah, actually, it's slightly worse than that because now we have an uneven playing field. They're not questioning every election. They're only questioning every election they lose. So in Virginia, they made this big deal about, oh my God, if we lose, because they thought it was gonna be a close election. If we lose, then it's definitely voter fraud, definitely voter fraud. They won, and then all of a sudden, nobody cared about voter fraud. It wasn't voter fraud, no. When the Republican wins, it's great, it's great. So what does that do? Now, every time Republicans win, Democrats aren't gonna randomly accuse them of voter fraud and do things like that. And so they're gonna be fine every time they win. Every time a Democrat wins, oh no, it's not a win, it's not a win, it's terrible, it's awful, let's question it, until they flip some of them and they pass laws to restrict voting rights, etc. And look, one of our members, Jojo H, wrote in and said, look, it's a problem for the press to ask favors of the president's chief of staff. I hear you, but I actually think that's the smallest thing. And I don't even think that that's necessarily a problem at all, okay? The real issue is when Mark Meadows comes out there and goes, we all know there was violence on January 6th anyway, so what's the big deal? No, that's not what you guys are saying now. You're not saying, oh, it was definitely Trump supporters and they were definitely violent and they were definitely trying to overthrow the election and give it a different result. If you said that, we wouldn't have a problem in the first place. But you don't say that, you lie about it nonstop. In fact, Trump was just at the event with Bill O'Reilly that apparently very few people went to. And there he talked about how the protesters were filled with love. So he's saying that they're peaceful and filled with love. And Mark Meadows goes on TV and goes, oh, what's the big deal? We all know they were violent anyway. No, we don't know that because you lie 24/7.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.